What is up, everybody? I am back and here to give you my final thoughts on the Brooks Glycerin Max. Let's get right into it. So if you weren't familiar, the Brooks Glycerin Max is Brooks's maximum, basically super trainer without a plate. I know in my first impressions video, I did compare it to the Super Blast 2, just from a form factor point of view. Both shoes have a premium foam. I'm not sure if DNA Tuned is going to be Brooks's racing foam, so I'm just going to say a premium foam. Super high stack heights, meant to take in a majority of your miles, especially in long runs, and no plate. So that's kind of the category that I put the Brooks Glycerin Max in. It's like a super trainer without the plate. Now, with that out the way, let's get right into it. Starting out with the outsole, as always. So as you can see, the outsole is a cool squiggly pattern, and the rubber on the outsole is actually on the softer side. I'm not exactly sure what rubber compound it is. I'll throw it up on the screen if I do figure it out from Brooks's website. But overall, it performed decently well. I run in mostly dry weather conditions on the road, so I really didn't have any problems with the traction on the outsole. So the traction performed very well. I didn't feel like I was going to slip at any point. Since the rubber is on the softer side to the touch, it did feel like it was gripping the concrete very well. Now, when you are going super fast, maybe almost sprinting, and you're gonna make a quick cut like I did a couple times on some of my runs, you are gonna feel a little bit of instability, but that's to be expected. These aren't designed for quick lateral movements like basketball or football. So if you're just running normally, you should be good to go as long as you're not doing like 100-meter sprints in a zigzag pattern. Now, as for durability, I do want to retract what I said in the first run review. I did say that this is a thinner rubber, and I was a little bit skeptical on how the durability would hold up. But with 25 miles now on the shoe, I'm actually quite impressed, to be honest. And I am going to make a separate video comparing this shoe to the Asics Super Blast 2. I was expecting the rubber to wear down a little bit quicker than what is going on right now. I know only 25 miles on the shoe, that's not a huge indicator on the durability of a shoe, but even on the Asics Super Blast 2, I did see the etchings on the bottom of the outsole start to wear down a little bit after 25 miles. And on the Brooks Glycerin Max, to my surprise, the etchings are still there on all parts of the outsole, which to me is pretty amazing. I am a bigger runner, 195 pounds, and typically I put a little bit more stress on shoes, I would say, and I can usually see a little bit of outsole wear depending on the shoe. And the Brooks Glycerin Max is holding up perfectly fine, and I am proud to announce that it looks like these should last quite a while. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the conversation starter on the Brooks Glycerin Max, which is the DNA tuned cushion setup. So in this shoe, obviously with a lot of running shoes, the cushion is probably the focal point or the most important part, the most innovative part of the running shoe. And it's no different with the Brooks Glycerin Max. So we have a full length DNA tuned midsole, which is, I believe, a new foam coming from Brooks. And I was super excited to try this foam out as it does look really cool too. There's like this casing, like a clear slash transparent casing that houses that yellow DNA tuned foam. And I just think it looks really sick. So that doesn't have anything to do with the performance, but I just wanted to take a note of that. And other notable stats about the Brooks Glycerin Max is that it has a 6mm heel to toe drop. I believe it's 45mm in the heel, dropping to 39mm in the forefoot. And I will confirm on the screen whether that is 100% correct, just to make sure. And the DNA tuned midsole honestly performed very well. I really enjoyed running in the Brooks Glycerin Max. I'm going to try to withhold my comparisons with the Asics Super Blast 2 because I'm going to save that for a separate video. I'm just going to focus on the Brooks Glycerin Max 2 or the Brooks Glycerin Max for this video. And the DNA tuned foam was pretty adaptive and pretty responsive depending on what type of pace I was throwing at it. So for those slow and easy miles, this shoe is going to feel like a dream. It's going to be really comfortable, pretty soft, not soft to the point where you feel unstable and you feel a little bit worried about where you're placing your feet. I think that's partly due to the wider base of the shoe. So with the high stack as well as the wider base, you're going to feel pretty supported and pretty stable in this shoe, especially at those slower miles. When you start to pick up the pace, like I was going marathon pace and faster, that's when the DNA Tune starts to adapt to the pace that you're running at. And instead of being super soft and cushioned, it starts to feel a little bit more not firm is the correct word, but I started feeling a little bit of ground feel as I was compressing the foam pretty quickly. And even though it is such a high stack, I was able to start feeling the ground a little bit more, kind of in a good way, where, with some max cushion shoes, you don't feel the ground at all. And I personally don't really like that. I kind of like feeling the ground just so that I know that I'm not being slowed down by the shoe, because you don't really want to sink into the running shoes, or at least in my opinion. Now, like I said, I did pick up the pace in this shoe, and I did feel that the foam started compressing really well, and I did get a little bit of ground feel. Now, with that being said, this foam is not going to feel bouncy. So what is a bouncy foam? A bouncy foam is going to feel like you're on trampolines. You're going to feel like you really get that responsiveness and that push back from the foam. You're not going to get that with the DNA tuned midsole, but I don't think that's completely a bad thing. This is going to be a more comfortable shoe for, maybe around marathon pace, half marathon pace. I think if you're running faster than that, this shoe is definitely not going to be the best option for that. And I think a lot of, serious runners as well as sneaker enthusiasts kind of know that already about the Brooks Glycerin Max. So if you're expecting to run a PR in the mile or 5K, this shoe probably won't fit those needs the most, but it'll be at least comfortable while you try to do it. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about on the midsole of the Brooks Glycerin Max is the rocker. Now, with a stack height this tall, as well as a softer foam and a cushioned experience, the way that this shoe kind of adds versatility is that really aggressive rocker in the forefoot. Now, I did feel like the shoe transitioned very well when I was trying to run a little bit faster, and it made the shoe feel a little bit more nimble, even though it's such a big shoe. So I really thought that the rocker was really nice. If anything, it helps you run a little bit quicker. And when you're doing your zone 2 or really slow miles, it'll kind of be calling you to say, hey, we can run a little faster if you want. So overall, I think that the cushioning of the Brooks Glycerin Max is fantastic. I think especially if you're going to run at a half marathon or slower pace, I think it's also going to be really comfortable and really supportive on your joints and just your health in general, because it absorbs so much impact and it's going to feel very cushioned doing it. And last but not least, we have the upper of the Brooks Glycerin Max. So this upper is a pretty standard Brooks upper. I would say that they didn't really change anything. They didn't try anything new. And I don't think that's necessarily too bad of a thing. So they have a pretty thick mesh on the upper. And I would say that one of the cons of this upper is that it's not very breathable. Since it's a little bit hotter right now in California, I felt my feet were getting super, super hot in these. Typically, I don't really mind if a shoe doesn't have too much ventilation or not, but since this upper is on the thicker side, it just feels like a blanket on your feet. So if you're running in very humid or hot weather conditions, this shoe is definitely not the best when it comes to ventilation. But if you're willing to compromise that to get the extra comfortable midsole, then that's a decision that you're gonna have to make on your own. Now, talking about the fit of this shoe, I would say it runs true to size. I have a little bit wider than average foot, and this shoe still felt really nice on my foot. I think Brooks usually does a very good job at keeping their sizing very consistent. So a regular size 12 fit my wider Shrek feet pretty well, and I had a little bit of room lengthwise in the toe box, which I personally really enjoy. So I think the fit was perfect. I would go true to size if I were you. And another thing I want to mention is that this shoe does not have a gusseted tongue, but I would say it doesn't really hinder the shoe's performance at all. And I think the fit is still pretty decent for it not having a gusseted tongue. Last but not least, when it comes to upper and fit, I want to talk about the most important part probably of running shoes is the heel lockdown. And with the runner's loop, I'm happy to announce that the heel lockdown is amazing in this shoe. I would say that it's a little bit more secure than the Brooks Hyperion Max 2. It's not exactly that one-to-one fit where I feel like my heel is glued into the shoe, but it's definitely above average, and I really didn't have to mess with the laces at all to make sure that my heel was locked in, other than, the runner's loop that I put. Now, if we're getting really nitpicky, I would say that I still stand by what I said in my first run review. You guys can go check that out if you haven't seen that already. But I do wish for $200, Brooks did put a more premium upper on the shoe. Not to say that this upper is cheap at all, but I would wish for a thinner upper and maybe a more breathable upper paired with those ribbed race laces that they put on the Brooks Hyperion Max 2. I think that would be really nice. And a gusseted tongue would have been nice, maybe a knitted gusseted tongue. Other than that, though, I would say that the upper did the job well. It kept me supported, and I had really no complaints other than I wished for a more premium experience for $200, at least on the upper. So overall, as you guys can probably tell, I am a fan of the Brooks Glycerin Max. Now at the price point, we got to talk about that, $200. I would say that it's a great shoe, but in my opinion, I think for around $160, whether you're looking at last year's models of certain shoes or you're just looking at premium daily trainers, I think $160 is kind of that sweet spot of getting a little bit more premium of a running shoe and a little bit more added foam and a little bit more added protection, and still being a little bit nicer on your wallet. Because I do think that $200 for this shoe, it's justifiable, you know, from a brand point of view. And maybe, you know, if you're a running enthusiast, sneaker enthusiast, you put a lot of miles on your legs every week and you prioritize being healthy, this shoe could definitely be worth that money. But I think for the average runner, or maybe a runner like me that does marathons or trains for marathons, but kind of caps out at around 50, 55 miles per week, I don't think that you need this shoe. It's definitely nice to have, but it's kind of up to you whether you think that it's justifiable at that $200 price point, because I think $200 is just a ridiculous amount of money for shoes. We're getting into race shoe pricing territory with that price. I know, you know, race shoes are mostly $225 and up, but $200 is still a lot of money to be spending on a shoe that's not plated, or, you know, maybe a shoe that you wouldn't really race in. But that's, you know, my personal opinion. I think for $160, you can still find a lot of premium daily trainers that kind of fit this build. Maybe they're not going to be as high in stack height or maybe have as cushioned of a feel as DNA Tuned, but it's going to kind of give you 80 to 90% of that performance for a considerable discount. So that's going to pretty much wrap up my review of the Brooks Glycerin Max. Again, I really did love the shoe, but I do have trouble recommending it wholeheartedly just because of the price. I think it's a phenomenal shoe. Kudos to Brooks for kind of branching out from what they normally do and kind of adding a new product line or a new form factor to their product line. I think this is a very exciting shoe, and I think a lot of people are going to love it if you're willing to spend that money. Excited also to see what they have planned for the future, because I think DNA Tuned is here to stay. I think it's going to be added to maybe their race shoes with a plate. Maybe we're going to get Brooks Hyperion Max 3 with DNA Tuned instead of their DNA Flash midsole. So really excited. Excited to see where Brooks takes this, and I just love it as, you know, a running shoe person and just a runner in general. I love when brands are competing and kind of giving us the best product, even though those prices are starting to get out of hand. But with that being said, I am very excited because the next shoe I'm going to be reviewing, if I can get my hands on it, is the Adidas Adizero Evo SL. So that's going to be $150. I believe it has one of those cushion plates. I'm not exactly sure, but it's full length Light Strike Pro, and I think it has a midfoot shank or some type of plastic plate in it. And for $150, I think that's going to be a phenomenal deal. Even though I said that the New Balance More V5 might be my shoe of the year, that one is definitely going to come after that title, and also probably the Asics Nova Blast 5 when it releases. But yeah, stay tuned for more videos, I guess, regarding the Brooks Glycerin Max. I am still putting more miles on the New Balance 1080 V14. But I am going to do a comparison for this shoe against the Super Blast 2 and possibly the New Balance More V5, because I do see some similarities between this one and the More V5. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting on the reviews. So that's going to pretty much wrap up the review. I know I'm kind of yapping right now, but I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.